Well, hello everyone, and welcome once again to Vlogitas. I'm Phil Ramsey, and in this Bible Truth series, we go through the Word together, chapter and verse, and we are now in the second grouping of Proverbs. And so we're going to be looking at, in this grouping of Proverbs, we're going to go from 16 to finish, which is chapter 31. And there are, 31 Proverbs. And so I know I mentioned it before, but I'll mention it again. Some people like to do what they call a daily proverb, where they just take the date of whatever day they want to read and say, okay, like say it was like, okay, today's the 22nd, and so you look up the 22nd proverb and you read it because, that's Proverb 22. And I imagine you could take anything too far, but if you're just looking at it as a basic exercise for, this is I want to read a proverb a day, and you can do it that way. And so anyway, let's and that's just one method of Bible reading if you want to do that. So part of what we do is discuss different methods of Bible reading and things like that. And so if it's helpful, keep it. If not, toss it. And as you go through life and seasons of life, you may find yourself saying, well, I think I should switch to a different translation. I feel led to only do this many verses, this many chapters a day. As you feel led. Some people do it in the morning, some people do it at night. Whatever works best for you, and that's the best way to do it. Whatever's working for you at the time, and work with the Lord on it. And so, if He leads you to go after studying a certain thing, go ahead and follow that and see how far that takes you, and see what He wants to do. So let's go ahead and pray. Father, I thank You for Your Word. I thank You that it is Your Word, Lord. It is Your established will, Your will shown forth to us. And help us to rightly divide this word of truth, Lord. Help us to apply this wisdom from the Scriptures to our life. This is wisdom for life in the book of Proverbs, and I thank You for all of it. And I thank You, and in Jesus' mighty name I pray. Amen. And so here we are in Proverbs 16. And so these we're just now getting into the Proverbs that are very, I can't say repetitious, but because a proverb is a short statement meant to lead to a wise conclusion or a lesson, and not stories and things like that. We're not illustrating wisdom through stories. We're just giving proverbs, and so it can seem not repetitious, but it can seem monotonous. And so you have to be careful not to let it all run together, so to speak, in your heart. You have to be attentive when you're reading the book of Proverbs, because you could easily miss something that would be very helpful just because it sounds like, well, it's kind of sing-songy and it's just kind of droning on. No, God expects us to look beyond the surface and find that goodness underneath. He expects us to seek wisdom, and it's interesting. I had, one Bible teacher was talking about how that Greek or the Hebrew word there for meaningless. And so we had gone through, we did an overview of the book of Song of Solomon, or the Song of Songs, but I hadn't heard that ministry, hadn't heard about that until after we did the overview. But it's like everything is meaningless. Actually, the word translated meaningless is like a vapor. It's like everything's a vapor. It's like it's tangible, yet at the same time, if I'm not careful, I'll just grasp air. It's like it's like chasing the wind, like he said. So in the same way, when we look at the Proverbs as running together and not being of much value on the surface, it's like it becomes like that. It's like, oh, it seems like it's not doing me any good, but really it does you a lot of good. But anyway, so here we are in Proverbs 16, verse 1. We can make our own plans, but the Lord gives the right answer. People may be pure in their own eyes, but the Lord examines their motives. And so, yeah, we see that the motives of the heart is what either justifies our actions or condemns our actions, because your motivation is going to bring about whatever result, and so really, it's, some people will say, well, I'm doing this for the greater good. And in many cases that thinking is wrong, because it's like, well, my intentions were good, but if your actions are evil, then that proves your intentions to be wrong, because it's not a good result at any cost, because a cost that goes beyond what God deems is okay is a cost that is too high. So verse 3, commit your actions to the Lord, and your plans will succeed. So he's really kind of, in these three verses, in these three Proverbs, he's really all kind of talking about, they all kind of follow the same thought, as we make our own plans, but but at the same time, God examines our motives, and if we want our plans to succeed, then we need to commit our actions to God. And if the action that we're taking is something that would not honor God, then we can't expect that plan to succeed. So I can only commit God-approved plans to God. I can only commit those actions to Him. Verse 4, the Lord has made everything for His own purposes, even the wicked for a day of disaster or a day of calamity, really is the word there. And so a calamity can, turn for good or for evil. If the wicked turn to the Lord, then they'll be saved. Verse 5, the Lord detests the proud. They will surely be punished. Unfailing love and faithfulness make atonement for sin. By fearing the Lord, people avoid evil. When people's lives please the Lord, even their enemies are at peace with them. Better to have little with godliness than to be rich and dishonest. We can make our own plans, but the Lord determines our steps. And so here, this may seem repetitious, but whenever God says something twice, we should really pay attention. Now, we should always, if God says something once, we should pay attention. But if He says something twice, that means that that's going to be very important to Him. I remember one time I was talking to my brother, and it was about school matters of, test taking and things. And he said, well, I said, I for notes, I don't really know what to do. And he said, well, when you're taking notes, and this applies too when you're taking notes in service, when you're taking notes, is that write down the things that strike you as important. And he said, and if the teacher repeats it more than once, if he says it twice, underline it. He says it once, you write it down, and if he says it again, then underline it to show, okay, he said this twice. This is probably going to be on the test. And so in verse 1, he said, we can make our own plans, but the Lord gives the right answer. And down in verse 9, he said, we make our plans, but the Lord determines our steps. So the steps toward that right answer, if you will. Verse 10, the king speaks with divine wisdom. He must never judge unfairly. The Lord demands accurate scales and balances. He sets the standards for fairness. Verse 12, a king detests wrongdoing, for his rule is built on justice. Or he's saying this is the way it should be. That's the way that he is stating this. Verse 13, the king is pleased with words from righteous lips. He loves those who speak honestly. The anger of the king is a deadly threat. The wise will try to appease it. When the king smiles, there is life. His favor refreshes like a spring rain. How much better to get wisdom than gold, and good judgment than silver. The path of the virtuous leads away from evil. Whoever follows that path is safe. I should say, what's virtue? Virtue is speaks to that incorruptibility of character. If when a person walks in complete integrity and they're like, I refuse to violate my conscience, I refuse to go against what God says is right, then that's virtuous. That's it's an incorruptibility of spirit, if you will. Verse 18, pride goes before destruction, and haughtiness before a fall. Yeah, my mom used to quote that verse all the time when I was growing up. Verse 19, better to live humbly with the poor than to share plunder with the proud. Those who listen to instruction will prosper. Those who trust the Lord will be joyful. So there's a path to joy. It's trust in God. Trust in the Lord. Trust in, how do we do that? By trusting in His word, what He has said. By trusting in His promises that He has given. And the things that He has said that we already have. Trust in those things. Trust in the unshakableness of God's promises, if you will. That what He has said will come to pass. Trust in those things, and then you will be joyful. But it's a it's a eventual effect, or you could say it's an eventuality. If I continually trust in the Lord, there will come a time when I will find myself in joy. Okay. Verse 21, the wise are known for their understanding, and pleasant words are persuasive. Discretion is a life-giving fountain to those who possess it, but discipline is wasted on fools. From a wise mind comes wise speech. The words of the wise are persuasive. So you can, pay attention to themes that keep kind of coming to the foreground. You got, when you're reading the Proverbs, pay attention to themes that keep rising up. Verse 24, kind words are like honey, sweet to the soul and healthy for the body. Kindness is a undervalued trait in today's society. Be kind. Love is patient. Love is kind. Verse 25, there is a path before each person that seems right, but it ends in death. And, other translations say there's a way that seems right to a man, but its end is destruction. And so that really is, that scripture parallels very much with what Jesus talked about. Like, narrow is the way to life. And when he said that, he was talking about, like, it's the Hebrew implies, like, it, or the Greek there, because it's the New Testament. And the Greek there implies, like, it's like wrought with obstacles, like it's a narrow way, like kind of moving through like a narrow chasm, where you're like having to move out of the way of rocks and things like that while you're moving. That's really what he's talking about. And so the obstacles then, and the Bible talks about stumbling blocks. What are those? That's temptations to sin. And so he's like, the path to life, after you've accepted Jesus, the path to life is still difficult, because you still have to live in this body, you still got to live in this flesh, and so you still got to deal with the temptations of life. And we're able to do that. The Bible says that Jesus has given us the power over sin, so we don't have to yield to temptations. We can bypass that. We can say, right now I'm being tempted. It makes it easier to say that out loud, by the way, when you realize you're being tempted to anything that's wrong. And then you say, I'm being tempted by this. That makes it a lot easier to say, yeah, I'm choosing to pass this test. I'm not going to give in to that temptation, because Jesus is the way of escape, right? So Jesus said, narrow's the way to life. It's difficult to get there, but it's not impossible. And it's with Jesus, it becomes an easy yoke that we're able to bear. But then over on the other side of it, he said, wide is the path that leads to destruction. And so when he's saying here that there's a path before each person that seems right, that's why that path is so broad, because it seems right. Everybody else is doing it. It seems like this is the way that that I can go. That's why when you talk to people about Jesus, a lot of times they're like, well, they don't realize they have a need for a savior. They're like, but I'm basically a good person. I don't think that God would send me to hell. But they haven't taken the time to find out what God says about it in his word. And so that's why that path is so broad. So verse 26, it is good for workers to have an appetite. An empty stomach drives them on. Scoundrels create trouble. Their words are a destructive blaze. A troublemaker plants seed of strife. Gossip separates the best of friends. Boy, that's the truth. Verse 29, violent people mislead their companions, leading them down a harmful path. With narrowed eyes, people plot evil. With a smirk, they plan their mischief. Gray hair is a crown of glory. It is gained by living a godly life. Better to be patient than powerful. Better to have self-control than to conquer a city. We may throw the dice, but the Lord determines how they fall. Chapter 17. Better a dry crust eaten in peace than a house filled with feasting and conflict. Verse 2. A wise servant will rule over the master's disgraceful son, and will share the inheritance of the master's children. So that sort of speaks to, the new covenant, and how in the New Testament, we Gentiles, those who are not of physical Jewish descent, we are classified as branches from the wild olive tree that God has grafted into his cultivated tree. But those other branches that were broken off, that rejected their Messiah, if they accept Jesus, then he will graft them back in, because he's able to graft them back in, and then you'll have the cultivated branches grafted back into the cultivated tree. And so this sort of parallels that, if you want to think about it that way. Verse 3, fire tests the purity of silver and gold, but the Lord tests the heart. Wrongdoers eagerly listen to gossip. Liars pay close attention to slander. Why? Because it's like minds, right? They're drawn. Verse 5, those who mock the poor insult their maker. Those who rejoice at the misfortune of others will be punished. Grandchildren are the crowning glory of the aged. Parents are the pride of their children. There is a translation note there. I wonder what that says. 6. Fathers. So parents, that works, yeah. Fathers are the pride of their children. Parents are the pride of their children. Verse 7, eloquent words are not fitting for a fool. Even less are lies fitting for a ruler. Why? Because lies are an unstable foundation. And if a ruler establishes their rule with lies, then it's all going to collapse like a house of cards. That's why the Antichrist's kingdom won't last. It can't last because it's built on intrigue and lies. Verse 8, a bribe is like a lucky charm. Whoever gives one will prosper. And that's meant sort of in an ironic sense, because bribes are not a good thing, and a lucky charm is not a good thing, because a lucky charm lends itself to superstition, which is not of God. The superstition is a belief in something that you don't understand. And so it's like, it seems like it's a good thing. It seems like a bribe is a good thing. It seems like, oh yeah, I'll just bribe the maitre d' $30 to get to the good table, but it's a bribe, and it twists justice. It twists the justice of waiting in the line, waiting our turn, and so it's like, yeah, it seems on the surface like they'll prosper, just like it seems on the surface that a lucky charm is a good thing, but it's actually not. Verse 9, love prospers when a fault is forgiven, but dwelling on it separates close friends. So this is again, how we see that forgetting is a component of forgiveness. We can't have true forgiveness without that act of forgetting the wrong that was done. It doesn't mean that you don't set up safe boundaries for the future if a person betrays you, but it simply means that I will not hold that against them. I've forgiven them that debt. They owe me nothing, and that's between them and God now. And I refuse to take up the case. And so when it says love prospers when a fault is forgiven, but dwelling on it separates close friends, you can see how going back to it will keep that. It will forever put a rift between those two people, you see. And so that causes a great issue in a person's heart. That's why Jesus said that if you don't forgive your neighbor, then your Father in heaven won't forgive you, because forgiveness is of God. And if we want to be seen as a child of God, or we want to be seen as a child in his eyes, then we are going to have to act like he acts. We're going to have to imitate our Father. And if he says forgive and forget, then we must do the same. So we have to be of our Father. And in order to be of our Father, we're going to have to do the works of the Father. And that's why Jesus said, my works are not my own, they're my Father's works. He said, anyone who has seen me has seen the Father. And so when we want to know what the Father's will, we have to look at Jesus. So imitate Jesus in how you live, and then you will be imitating the Father, and the Father will be like, this here is my son, this here is my daughter, because they are of me. They act as I act, you see. Verse 10, a single rebuke does more for a person of understanding than 100 lashes on the back of a fool. Evil people are eager for rebellion. I said eager people. I can't talk right now. So eager, I said eager people, but it's evil people are eager for rebellion, but they will be severely punished. Well, that was a good way to bring some comedy to a severe verse, right? So verse 12, it is safer to meet a bear robbed of her cubs than to confront a fool caught in foolishness. Verse 13, if you repay good with evil, evil will never leave your house. Starting a quarrel is like opening a floodgate, so stop before a dispute breaks out. Acquitting the guilty and condemning the innocent Both are detestable to the Lord. Why? Because the foundation of that is lies, it's deception. And so Jesus, again, Jesus said, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. And so God, thank you. So God is all about truth. And so anything that's deceptive or false is going to rub up directly against everything he stands for. And so, we can't let the guilty get off, and we can't let the innocent be condemned. That's an injustice. Verse 16, it is senseless to pay to educate a fool, since he has no heart for learning. You can have a heart for learning then. Verse 17, a friend is always loyal, and a brother is born to help in time of need. A brother is born for adversity, so another verse says. Verse 18, it's poor judgment to guarantee another person's debt or put up security for a friend. Anyone who loves to quarrel loves sin. Anyone who trusts in high walls invites disaster. The crooked heart will not prosper. The lying tongue tumbles into trouble. It is painful to be the parent of a fool. There is no joy for the father of a rebel. A cheerful heart is good medicine, but a broken spirit saps a person's strength. So then happiness or sadness flow from the heart. So then you make your heart cheerful, and it's medicine not only to you, but to all those around you. But if you allow your spirit to stay broken, it saps up your strength. It drains you, and it drains those around you eventually. Verse 23, the wicked take secret bribes to pervert the course of justice. Sensible people keep their eyes glued on wisdom, but a fool's eyes wander to the ends of the earth, always looking for, well, this must be the answer, this must be the answer, this must be the answer, just grasping. But wisdom is to trust God. Verse 25, foolish children bring grief to their father and bitterness to the one who gave them birth. It is wrong to punish the godly for being good, or to flog leaders for being honest. A truly wise person uses few words. A person with understanding is even-tempered. Even fools are thought wise when they keep silent. With their mouths shut, they seem intelligent. And I think I can get over into chapter 18 here. Chapter 18. Unfriendly people care only about themselves. They lash out at common sense. Fools have no interest in understanding. They only want to air their own opinions. Doing wrong leads to disgrace, and scandalous behavior brings contempt. Wise words are like deep waters. Wisdom flows from the wise like a bubbling brook. It is not right to acquit the guilty or deny justice to the innocent. And that's a very similar verse to one of the ones we just looked at in chapter 18. So, recurring theme here. Verse 6, fools' words get them into constant quarrels. They are asking for a beating. The mouths of fools are their ruin. They trap themselves with their lips. Rumors are dainty morsels that sink deep into one's heart. Yeah. Don't give much stock to rumors. Let every word be established by the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, and those people who are directly centered around an incident. Don't pay attention to rumors. The best you can pray about them. You can bring them up before God and then let them drop. Verse 9, a lazy person is as bad as someone who destroys things. The name of the Lord is a strong fortress. The godly run to him and are safe. The rich think of their wealth as a strong defense. They imagine it to be a high wall of safety. That sort of explains sort of interprets a previous verse that we looked at just back here. I don't remember where it was, but it talked about those who trust in high walls. It's a foolish thing to do, to trust in a high wall. And now he's saying that the rich imagine their riches as a high wall of safety, but they're not. They're in the book of James it says that they're unreliable. It's an unreliable foundation because it could be here today, gone tomorrow. Verse 12. Haughtiness goes before destruction. Humility precedes honor. What's humility? Just not thinking of yourself as more important than you are. And God places a great deal of importance upon us, but we have to acknowledge that that without God we can do nothing. And when we do that, that's the beginning of humility. Verse 13, spouting off before listening to the facts is both shameful and foolish. The human spirit can endure a sick body, but who can bear a crushed spirit? Intelligent people are always ready to learn. Their ears are open for knowledge. Giving a gift can open doors. It gives access to important people. And it's not necessarily a monetary gift. It might be a gift that you have for storytelling or art, or anything that can be considered something of value. It doesn't necessarily have to be something we buy. Verse 17, the first to speak in court sounds right until the cross-examination begins. Flipping a coin can end arguments. It settles disputes between powerful opponents. Very wise statement. Verse 19, an offended friend is harder to win back than a fortified city. Arguments separate friends like a gate locked with bars. Wise words satisfy like a good meal. The right words bring satisfaction. The tongue can bring life or death. Those who love to talk will reap the consequences. For either good or bad is what it's saying. But, in a different translation, it's death and life are in the power of the tongue. And those who love it will eat of its fruit. So we want good fruit or bad fruit. We need to be speaking life. Speaking life. It's like the Toby Mac song, If you don't know what I'm talking about, don't worry about it or look it up. Verse 22. The man who finds a wife finds a treasure, and he receives favor from the Lord. The poor plead for mercy. The rich answer with insults. Verse 24. There are friends who destroy each other, and it's in quotation, so friends who destroy each other, but a real friend sticks closer than a brother. And so that's where you find Jesus in the book of Proverbs. He's a friend who sticks closer than a brother. Jesus told the disciples, I call you my friends. And then in the book of Hebrews, the Bible says that he is unashamed to call us his brothers and sisters, those of us who have said out loud that he is Lord and believe in our heart God's risen from the dead. And so there he is, Jesus, that friend that sticks closer than a brother. So let's go ahead and pray. Father, I thank you for your goodness and your wisdom. I ask, Lord, that you would bless all those who tune in here, and I ask that you would bring these things up to their remembrance as they need them. And in Jesus' mighty name I pray. Amen. Well, bless you guys, and we will see you again.